How's everybody doing this evening? Good. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your evening to come tonight and listen to a project and provide some feedback on a project that really stands to bring a lot of benefit to this community. My name is Ben Geselbracht, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange, and this is Jan Hastings, our Executive Director. Tonight, we'll be presenting the draft of the business plan for a new progressive zero-waste material recovery facility. This facility is designed to meet the recycling needs of the community that's growing and for the future, and it's designed to be a community hub for sustainability. And we hope that the Nanaimo City will provide capital funding to build the facility. So tonight, we'd really like to present to you and make it very clear why we have a need for this new recycling facility, and that you come away with an understanding of the scope of the project, the operations, and the costs involved. And through your experiences and the information provided, that you'll be able to provide feedback that we'll be able to incorporate into the business plan that we'll be presenting to Council on June 11th. We deeply want this facility to reflect the needs of the community, and we want it to be a leading example for Vancouver Island, the province, and the country, and so your input is very important to us. We have Aerosmith Media here that is making a video of this presentation that'll be posted online, so come there's all this equipment here. And by the end of this presentation, we really hope that you, like us, feel inspired about this project, what it means to the community, and that on June 11th, you'll be able to come to the City Council and fill the chambers to let City Council know that the community feels strongly about the future and when they're making the decision. So I will present first, followed by Jan, and then we'll have questions and a discussion for the rest of the session. So the big question is, why does Nanaimo need a purpose-built facility to collect and sort the diversity of waste that comes through our households? And most importantly, why does this facility need to be publicly funded? We all get that global waste is increasingly polluting our soils, it's polluting our seas, and it's changing the composition of our atmosphere. This increasing threat to our environment is in large part due to when products were designed in the past, they were designed that at the end of their life cycle, they would be buried into the ground or incinerated. Now, we know that with 7.6 billion people on the planet, that there is not enough room to be doing this, and we're quickly running out of room. And so there needs to be a solution, and there is a solution. And the solution is a zero-waste green economy where products are designed to continually cycle through phases of consumption, collection, reuse, repair, and then remanufacture. And this is what we call the zero-waste circular economy. And this is our new proposed facility. There is a international alliance, the Zero Waste International Alliance, that has put out a hierarchy of highest best use for material. And this hierarchy is really a guidepost for how to develop a zero waste economy. So we see here that up on the bottom, to tell how to use materials, it's not okay for incineration. And as you move up, it's the highest best use. And we see that we've got recycling, composting here, but above there are even more important things that we need to develop, such as reuse, repair, the remanufacturing of products, the ability to lobby and change packaging design so that if packaging exists, that it's designed so that it can be remanufactured. And then even higher up on the chain, which we need to really promote, is how to reduce and refuse. So if you know that a product, so that you're aware that if a product is not recyclable, that's something that you're not going to purchase. And this is really what's guiding the development of this vision for a new facility and to support Nanaimo with. So all communities must make this transition to become sustainable. And the sooner that Nanaimo can develop the public infrastructure and the public habits to be able to work in this type of economy, the sooner that we can avoid costly environmental challenges, like siting a new landfill. I talked to one of the last a past RDN board member that was part of that process, and it is a nightmare. Nobody wants a landfill near their property, and it is like 20 times more expensive than the facility that we're proposing, millions more in operating cost each year. So as a regional district, the RDN has recently committed to a 90% diversion target from waste from the landfill. This is quite an ambitious goal. Currently, our diversion is just barely leading other jurisdictions, but still 55% of recyclable materials are still ending up into the landfill. So when the NRE closed, myself and my partner, Larissa, we went to the different recycle locations to see what we could get rid of. And I source separate all my material, and so I went around, and you can recycle quite a lot of material in town still. However, we were left over with the hard to recycle materials like certain types of plastics, bubble wrap, certain styrofoams. And so we went to get rid of them. And then we also had like an old hose and a few things. So we went to the regional landfill to get rid of it. And we shot this video of what was inside the bin there. And it really shocked us. So here you see a bunch of paper. There's a plastic child's toy. There's a couch. There's cardboard. These are all materials that do not have to be there, especially the cardboard and the plastics. There's new cutlery there. When we pulled in, there's a bunch of young guys. This was at 5 o'clock on a Sunday that had to move out. It was the end of the month, and they were just tossing all their stuff in. Why? The NRE normally open till 7, wasn't there, and there was no other options, and potentially they didn't know better. But this should not be allowed to happen. So many of these landfilled recyclables are coming from materials that aren't collected at curbside. They're coming from commercial properties, and they're also coming from multifamily complexes. Both Jan and I sit on the Regional District Solid Waste Management Plan Advisory Committee, so there's a new plan coming out for the next 10 years. And it's very clear that the collection of these materials is a large gap in the current recycling system. So the largest obstacles in dealing with this gap is being able to offer a system that is low cost and convenient, so people will regularly use it, that's comprehensive, which means that all possible recycled materials can be collected. And lastly, it's really important that a recycling system is effective. And what I mean by effective is that it can produce clean and separated recycle streams with zero contamination so that they'll be able to be shipped and accepted by brokers. So producing these separated and clean recycle streams for remanufacturing, reuse, and repair is especially critical right now with places such as China that are becoming increasingly strict about accepting contaminated material and waste from all over the world. So zero contamination, it requires a special hand-sorted, source-separated facility design. And this design is too costly for private enterprise to be able to develop, build, and manage. This is especially so if they wanted to offer a comprehensive service that accepts everything and have a paper trail that goes to the end point of recycling. Because a lot of times it's cheaper, especially if the material gets a little bit contaminated, to send it to landfills down in the United States that are incredibly cheap. So given these negative market forces for private enterprise to do it right, it is crucial to have public investment in Nanaimo to be able to meet these current recycling challenges and to prepare our community for the future. So this is why the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange is asking the city for $6.05 million in capital funding to build a zero-waste material recovery center that is designed to meet the growing and changing recycling needs of Nanaimo. So this facility will be a community hub for zero-waste education, outreach, research, and advocacy, and it also will provide innovative programs for reuse and repair. So to make zero-waste recycling work requires harnessing public participation. And for 25 years, the NRE, in partnership with the City of Nanaimo and the RDN, have been providing services that has resulted in 800 to 1,500 people a day using the NRE facility. These numbers include also hundreds of small to medium businesses that relied on the comprehensive commercial recycling services. So I'm curious here, how many people use the NRE and relied on the services? Okay, so I mean, I think that everyone is on the same page of what this facility and the service meant. So people have really developed an ownership and a loyalty to the NRE because of the trust in the nonprofit allowed people to feel that when they brought bottles or reusable items that could be sold in the reuse market or materials that bring revenue, any extra profit was being reinvested, because it's a nonprofit, back into the furthering of zero waste initiatives to divert waste. So we calculated that the NRE reinvests about $300,000 a year back to these initiatives to deal with especially hard to recycle items that cost money to recycle and come at a deficit. We've also, through this reinvestment of profit, have spent already up to $1.5 million in the development of this progressive new zero waste material recovery facility. So if we lose a nonprofit like the NRE, the valuable monies from revenue generating materials will be lost. The community loses a financial asset, and innovation is not going to take place at the rate that we need to address the future needs. So although similar one-stop drop recycling facilities do exist in other leading jurisdictions like the Cowichan Regional District, who actually just recently passed our diversion from landfill rate, these centers are fully publicly funded and come at a much higher cost, per capita cost to the citizens, and also doesn't have the same grassroots participation that the Made in Nanaimo partnership does. So by investing in a comprehensive zero waste recovery facility that's run by a nonprofit that'll be a community hub for sustainability for the city could not be investing in anything more aligned with its strategic planning objectives for economic, environmental, and social health. So over 7,000 community members from all over the city wrote to City Council to keep the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange operational. And at this stage of development of developing a zero waste, green, circular economy, it is now the time to deepen the support for this partnership between the NRE and the city and the RDN that has been clearly producing results. So council asked us for a business plan. We have one for a vision and a facility that is very well thought out, it's well costed out, and it's based on 25 years of success. As you will also see, it is also very affordable, and most importantly, it is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for our future, it's the right thing to do for the environment, and it's the right thing to do for our community. So without too much more, I will pass things over to our amazing Executive Director, Jan Hastings. And Jan will give us more detail on the operations, the cost of the facility, and the vision. So thank you, Jan.
The city has asked us for a business plan, and we have an operational business plan, but we realize that we're doing two things here. We're telling the business about the NRE and our finances and operations, but we also need to tell them about the new facility and why we need it, what it's all about, and what the cost is. So our plan that we've developed for the city is a bit of a hybrid of what you would think is a standard business plan and something that's more like a business case for a new facility. So there is your centrally located, purpose-built facility that meets our needs for now and for the future. First thing to know about this slide is that it isn't simply a replacement for this. Every time I look at this now, I just think it looks like a Tijuana jail. Probably should have been repurposed for that.
Do we know about that now?
All right. I was younger then. There's so much more that went into the planning and the development of the new facility, and I want to tell you about that. So first we had a design team, and it was led by NRE Management and the Board of Directors, and architect David Poiron, who's a local architect, and construction management Darren Moss, who are both leaders and innovators in our city and who are both deeply committed to this project. So we're extremely lucky to have two noted people on board with us. Also, there was a team of architects, engineers, and consultants. And also the City of Nanaimo staff provided us with a lot of really extensive expertise and advice as we were in the planning stages. So what were we thinking? What did we know already? The plan is based on knowledge from, really, as Ben said, 25 years of working together with the city and the RDN and the 3 Rs program. It goes back a long way. That partnership really is the main reason we see 1,500 people a day coming into the NRE. It's based on research, and it's based on pilot programs done at the NRE and a lot of visits to other recycling depots. And it's based on development of our proven and tested hybrid operational and funding model that we implemented. Okay. It's based on also what can happen with dedication to zero waste. So we started with an empty lot. We knew there was a new diversion target coming. We needed to have convenience with an incentive for people to recycle and participate. We needed to think about how we were going to implement rethink, repair, and upcycle and reuse. We wanted a sustainable footprint with renewable energy powered equipment. We wanted a place where not only residents but also businesses could participate in zero waste, and that's been a gap in our community. We needed a site that was better for volunteers and better for people participating in our employment training programs, especially for people with barriers. We needed to prioritize adult education, not just kids in school. We knew there were extreme global pressures for 0% contamination. Used to be 10 to 15%. It's 0 now. Also for household hazardous waste. Everybody has the garden shed full of stuff you don't know what to do with. We need to do something about that. There's the plastic problem. I don't know how many kabillions of tons of plastic we have produced. We've recovered between 8 and 9% of it for 30 years. That's it. So we have a lot of work to do there. We also want this NRE to be the hub of sustainable living, not just a recycling depot. It's a place where everybody's going to come and learn and figure out how to do more and add more to our community. It's a lot to think of when you're designing a facility, but it's what we need for the future. Two other important concepts were really important to us. One is job design, which is related to facility design. At the old site, we had employees on the front line who, in their heart of hearts, they want to teach people about recycling and be green and do all the right things, but they're stuck running around on a forklift and with bins and bags, and they don't have time to talk to you when you come. So that had to change. There has to be room for the recycling yard and all the heavy equipment, and there has to be room for the people who really just want to teach people and be green. The other really big question we had was we had to re-examine the one-stop drop. So back in about 2012, the previous manager of solid waste at the RDN, Carrie McIver, who was there for about 30 years, did me a great favor. She told me to stop taking all that crap and cluttering up the lot and decide what we're going to be and be like all those other depots that make money. And I thought, clearly, I have to redefine the NRE and figure out what we're here for. That made me re-examine every single item we took and every process that we had. And the one unequivocal truth that kept coming up is that people love to recycle and people don't want to work too hard at it. You don't want to spend all day Saturday recycling. You just want to do it on the way to what you want to do on Saturday. So the research still says, don't make people walk more than 5 meters to recycle something. The research still says, don't make people hold something in their hand for longer than 5 minutes, or it's going to go in the garbage. The research still says people want to belong to a community of people doing the right thing, but they'll only do it if they can go somewhere and be with other people who are doing the right thing. If you're at home and you're washing out jars and containers and cutting the zip off the lock, you think you're the only person doing it. But if you come and you talk to people and you're taught by people and you're all doing the same thing, it has a deeper meaning for all of us and it makes us all want to keep doing the right thing. So that's why the NRE is the NRE. We have this one place where everybody comes to learn about and to do the right thing. It's also why people can't give up on the NRE and why we all care so much about this really oddball place that keeps making people feel good about doing the right thing. We also knew when we were planning that we're ready to go after the new 90% target. People are ready for that. We know we're ready to ramp it all up and do more. And so that's why we're going to ask the city, or we are asking the city, to continue this partnership. So that's why you see this. Why does it cost $6.05 million to do what we want to do? So I'll show you the cost breakdown of when we started to get in this whole construction thing. These costs are before you do anything. Architects, consultants, engineers, you have to get this plan before you can get a budget. So you have that. Off-site civil works are everything, all your connections onto, sewer and water and everything, and the roads. Then you have to get the site ready for construction. Then you have to do the same thing on your site and hook up all the water and sewer and everything. These are all big numbers. Paving for our site, we have asphalt paving, and then we also have, you'll see, is a lot of concrete. We have to have reinforced concrete on the site because we have trucks and heavy equipment. One building alone on the Kenworth side is that much. Okay. The covered area in the middle, where you'll walk around with your recycling, it's not even an enclosed building, but it also has a high number attached to it. And then the south building that has two purposes, where upstairs would be the market and downstairs would be our education and administration, a little bit more expensive because it's a finished building on the inside. So you can see the cost there. You must do landscaping. You can't just leave the property. You have to have proper landscaping for water and you know, everything leaving the site. The landscaping is a big part of that. We want to have green equipment, so we have to purchase new equipment instead of bobcats and excavators everywhere. We want some green equipment. And then, you know, you have to have furniture and equipment, even though we know we're probably just going to use secondhand stuff because that's what we do. So that all adds up. You can see the top number there, 4.7 something. That's kind of the cost of everything we just saw. On the bottom is the numbers that really hurt, because you have to add contingencies for design and for construction, and every month we don't build, it costs us an extra 1%. So you add those numbers up and you get another 1.3. So these are the numbers that we're faced with. It's, I guess the day I saw that number, it shocked me, but and I wish the number were lower. But really, it is an investment in our community, an investment in the future. So when we break it down and look at what it's going to cost each of us, it's not really such a scary number. So on March 26th, if we're looking at how we're going to pay for this now, on March 26th, Council directed staff to complete a staff report with options for funding the new NRE project. And so what staff came up with was, which seems to be the most viable option so far, is an annual operating grant that would service NRE debt. So we would secure a loan for the cost of construction, and the city of Nanaimo would service the debt on that loan with an annual grant. So for 25 years, they would do that. So at 6%, which is the ballpark of where we're going to get a loan for, the cost for 25 years annually would be what you see there, about $467. So we don't know the exact dollar amount until we go get that loan and you find out, is it 6% or is it 5.8% interest? You know, so that's why we say approximately here. So two indicators of what that would cost per household is the mayor was at our session on Saturday, and so what he says is he's run these numbers to figure out what it would cost if the city of Nanaimo backstops a loan or backstops our mortgage, and he figures about $1.80 per 100,000 of assessed value of a home. So if you own a $500,000 home, it's going to cost you about $9 a year. And the staff report from this March 26th staff report actually said they came out with a number, an approximation again, of about $10 a year. So we have to all know that it's entirely up to council what option they would choose and how they might suggest that it get funded. So we can't all hang our hats on these numbers, but we know that there are options. So we are also going to make an interim funding request to the city. In 2017, when we sent our urgent letter off to the city, when I got the big number and I realized it's way too much debt for the NRE, and we asked for help again to build a new facility, there was still time to do the build and transition next door. It takes about 2 days to move a baler, and so the move next door was going to be done without interruption to service and without interruption to revenue. We still had time for that. So if construction had been, if construction funding had been secured at that time, we would have used that money to do the demolition we've had to do on the site, but it wasn't, and so we had to use NRE reserves to pay for the demolition, and that's a high number. So that came right out of NRE operational reserves set aside. Also, if construction had started early, closure would not have happened. We wouldn't have had to close. So these really unfortunate delays have interrupted that schedule, and now that we're closed, it really does mean significant interruption of service and revenue. So the NRE has obligations. We're still paying on the mortgage on the property that we want to build on. So we will be asking the city also to provide some pre-operational funding. These costs here are just some of the costs I've just told you that we have. We will also need to add to that some kind of startup number, because it's going to take 1 to 3 months before our receivables start flowing in. They just don't appear the first day we open. It takes a couple of months for them to start coming in so that we can count on them. Don't have that number yet, but you get an idea of where we're going to be at there. So the NRE is also, just to show you our contributions to date and going forward. So Ben outlined some of what we've done. We have spent about $1.5 million on buying property and paying the mortgage and the site design costs to date. And development costs. We're right at building permit stage right now. We're right there. So that's cost quite a bit of money to get there. And in the future, if the city provides the grant, we will continue to pay the cost of the mortgage. We owe about another $1.1 million. We're happy to continue paying for that. So that'll be our contribution. Okay, money. So what the city has asked for, and no need to study this. It'll be a public document when we give this to council. So the city has asked for 3 years of our actual statements and then a 10-year projection of what it would look like once we open. So we've given them actually 12 years because we're going to have a couple funny years. This is one of them because we're not even operating. And then even the year we open would be a funny year also. So we added 10 onto that. So I can tell you that yearly expenses for the NRE are usually in the range of about around $1 million, 1.1, and our revenue is usually in the range of 1.1 to 1.2. So we typically post a modest surplus every year. These projections include the $300,000 that you heard that the RDN has now earmarked for the NRE. There was talk before of whether it would actually come to us or be spread around the community. So we are now the recipient of that $300,000, and it's really, really important funding for zero waste recycling. And so we really acknowledge the board of directors of the NRE for seeing that vision and committing that money to zero waste recycling, because those are the costs that the NRE has shouldered for years. So that will really help. Now we can start a new program like mattresses and furniture, and you won't see it at the dump. It'll be getting recycled.
The money's from the $300,000 from the RDN to the NRE, if that wasn't.
Did I say that backwards?
We get the acronyms mixed up because they're quite close to one another.
It's from the RDN. So we also think, so that money's been committed for 5 years. The solid waste management plan is for 10 years. So in our thinking, it would be really good if that money were just committed for 10 years, which is the life of the plan. So in 5 years, we hope that Nanaimo Council provides that influence to the RDN vote, because they can do that. They all sit on that board, and they can provide the influence on that board to secure that $300,000 funding, I hope, forever, because it's really needed. So we've provided the city with 3 years of actual, 12 years of projections, with a really conservative, return to operations, because we don't know, we're going to be on a new site for one thing, and we've been closed down. We've never been closed before, and so it's a very conservative estimate of our revenue. Okay. Our nonprofit zero waste funding model has always been a bit different, maybe a little bit contentious, because the privates think we compete with them. But in order to do zero waste recycling, which is recycling all that stuff that we don't get any money for, we've always accepted products that have commodity value and then use the revenue from that to fund the zero waste recycling. There's been no other way to do that. The takeaway from this model is that the not-for-profit model always ensures that all revenue gets returned back in to the NRE, to the society, and into the community services, and so that we can just keep on reducing waste. Okay. So our project timeline. This is number 1. So then we would go get our loan. In the meantime, finalize the building permit. Tectonica, which would start tendering their contract and shovel in ground by August. And we're hoping July the next year for occupancy. These are the timelines we have from the construction management company. And then September, grand opening. Yay! So, these are the benefits to the community, and Ben talked a little bit about the 4 pillars. Nanaimo strategic plan has 4 pillars. They are environmental and economic and social. I'll just give you a minute to stare at those. I think because it's so much more than just a recycling depot, there are so many more benefits. The last pillar in Nanaimo strategic plan is a cultural benefit, and I really believe that we can all live in one culture, which is zero waste. So I'm going to take you on a tour of our site. Okay, the new family arrives in Nanaimo needing bedroom furniture for 3 children. The neighbors tell them to go to the NRE, where they find beds and dressers at the reused market, and they can't believe it when the staff gives them free bedding and a pair of runners for each of the kids. While they're there, they ask questions about how to recycle at the depot and at the curbside. They learn where to get their yellow bags and their bins and the recycling garbage pickup schedule. They learn somebody's name. They learn from 3 people in 10 minutes how to recycle. And they're instantly part of a community looking after their city. Wow, they never had that in the city they came from. They didn't have a facility, anything like as comprehensive as what they see here. Nanaimo has a new family of recyclers. 1,000 to 15 other people come to the NRE that day. Household recyclers easily find parking in oversized stalls where they can get out of their car, have a wheeled cart for loading the recycling safely from either the side or the rear of their car instead of the crash, bump, bang we used to have. The NRE staff person will be right there to help you and direct you to where you need to go with your products. On the way, a volunteer appears and asks if you have any batteries or printer cartridges to take way up into the other area of the depot. At these drop-off tables, staff will be there at all times to demonstrate correct recycling by teaching the categories for separation and where to recycle each item. Why does the styrofoam cooler go downstairs while the styrofoam packaging stays upstairs? A volunteer takes one person to the rinse station with some containers, while another directs the person with the metal ornament away from the scrap metal bin to the reused market because somebody wants that ornament. The recycler puts the items on the table, and nothing goes away or out of your vision until there is zero contamination. You and the staff person will both you'll be learning, the staff person will be teaching, but nothing will go away like when you have a bin and you can just put your bag in it and hope for the best. It'll be 0% before you leave. At the hand wash station, the recycler notices a divertometer with a 90% number, some pamphlets advertising home sorting stations, and a public meeting notice with the title "Break Free from Plastic." The NRE staff is always nearby, at the ready to teach and reignite the passion for recycling and caring about the beautiful place we live. Okay. It's RDN Clean Out Your Garden Shed Day. You can bring those questionable cans and boxes of liquids and powders you don't want to use, but you don't know what to do with. You can be sure of environmental safety when you bring your products to the NRE, because the site is designed to both prevent and capture any spills that could occur. This liquid and hazardous waste collection area has locking tanks, and they're situated in a raised curb area around all the tanks to capture any spillage, and then with a floor slope to an outside underground tank that is large enough to capture all the volume that's in that building. We have to have these precautions. And then they have, and also underground, they have something called the jellyfish. All I can remember every time is it's a sea creature, and which also collects anything that might make it across the surface and into the street, and it will go into a bioswale. So there's absolutely no risk of any spillage or waste of these hazardous liquids. And so the interior parking lot has the oil separator and the jellyfish that move stuff on to the bioswale. Okay. The mobile business employee arrives for the second trip of the day, traveling down the designated laneway clearly marked at the entrance gate. The one stop dropping of plastic and styrofoam and cardboard is easy, but the recycler mentions he's the only one in the company that recycles. And then so the staff person tells him about the membership program with free company waste audits that can save time and money for businesses, and the driver takes away the pamphlet to give to his boss. On the way past the reuse market, he buys a bag of cut rags made by the volunteers from donated textiles. Here comes the corporate member with a trailer load of plastic film sorted into categories in NRE mega bags, the way they were taught by the NRE Zero Waste educator. NRE staff offloads the bags, logs the weights, give the driver replacement bags, and business is done. And why is it so quiet? All moving equipment is electric and silent. All heavy equipment operates on the lower level, down towards the Shenton Road area, so it's far away from people, far away from the household recyclers. So finally, the NRE walks the talk. Next. So back up into the market area. The VIU, it's bike day at the NRE market. All bicycles and parts donated by the NRE to Hub City Cycles have been repaired and are now for sale. Families and cyclers come to get a bargain bike, and Hub City Cycle staff demonstrates basic maintenance and repair using recycled oil and reclaimed parts. It's suitcase day at the reuse market. Instead of bags, shoppers can fill a suitcase for $5. A volunteer is seen loading hockey skates and gear for distribution to outlying thrift stores from Arrington to Ladysmith. Inside the market, the VIU student sits at the workbench watching the volunteer, who happens to be a retired electrician, repair a lamp or a speaker or a vacuum cleaner. Her job is to deconstruct appliances and catalog the parts. The John Howard Community Hours volunteer removes screws from plastic toys so that they can now be recycled. That's our vision for your zero waste facility.
Thank you, Jan. So in those slides that you see up there, that's just one portion of where the residential drop-off is. In the center of it is where all the large semi-trucks to pick up the materials come through. And then there's a whole nother third portion, different than we've ever seen, that is another circular area for commercial and people to do the drop-off of larger items like hot water tanks or yard waste and that. So there's no cross-contamination of different user groups, and there's a nice flow which will dramatically make the space much quieter, have a much greater flow, and allow to efficiently drop off materials for everyone. Right now we're going to take questions. We're going to do our best to have everybody an opportunity to speak, and I'll just go kind of back and forth across the room. If you have longer feedback, just so that we have an opportunity for everybody to ask a question, we have sheets up front here that we really encourage you to write your feedback on, and that we'll be taking that to incorporate, look at it for consideration into the plan. So without any further ado, I don't think there's anything else to mention. Yeah, we can take questions. So I'll just start here and then kind of move back. Yeah?
I was wondering about, great presentation, by the way, and I want that in my community. The yard waste, that you guys will still be taking yard waste, right?
It's up in the air.
Or-
That's an RDN program. And they're making changes to the program. And so we don't know yet. I know there's still no collection area in that, in that center of town, no collection center in that area of town, I mean. So that's a little bit up in the air still.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to. Okay. Yeah, the question was whether we'll be still accepting yard waste. And of course, as part of a one-stop drop, it is really convenient, and it really allows increased usership if people know that if you got anything, bring it here. And so we do really want to offer the yard waste program. The RDN is simply changing how they're structuring it, because they've got bins now that they've spent money on that's going out to the community and the city of Nanaimo. So the yard waste program may change in some aspects, but we do definitely plan to have some aspect of it. However, just for our financial projections, because the RDN was somewhat complicated, giving us, we were collecting material for them and they're paying the tipping fee, we just didn't add it into our financial projections. So, yep.
Thank you for the presentation. I really loved it, and I can't wait. Did you, in your design, take under consideration that Nanaimo and the area is growing and there will be more people?
Do you want to repeat the question?
The question was that in our design, did we take into consideration the fact that the Nanaimo area's population and use is growing?
So definitely yes, growing and adapting, both of those things. So the new facility is designed for increased capacity and volume, and also it's designed for changing markets, which we see all the time.
And that design really two factors in the fact that the actual reuse sector is very underdeveloped, and it brings a lot of revenue into the community. And especially for not-for-profits. You have the Salvation Army, you have the Restore, you have us as well, and there are others. And when you looked at that picture of the dump, there's still an incredible amount of material that could be reused that is, it's sitting money, because people will pay for it. People don't want to go buy a brand new golf bag for, I don't know how much they cost, $200, when it's possible to get one for $20, especially if you're a young guy just getting into the game. So this is an area that we have planned to allow expansion, and potentially the NRE can also be a bit of a sorting house to allow for other nonprofits that have reusable stores to use from. So this is part of the thinking of looking down the line of how things will look in the future. So.
We get so much volume there that it's funny to think of us actually spreading it back out, but for reuse, it's really important. We would spread it back out to the community. Another part of expansion, though, would be what do we do when we build this and then other areas in the RDN want to participate? So there's enough room at this facility, and we built 2 loading docks for things, because we know we're going to be taking things like furniture and mattresses, which are big and bulky. They need to be going out all the time, so we have 2 active loading docks. So.
And how many metric tons does the reuse store divert at this point?
1 metric ton per day goes out of that reuse market.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You seem to be basing this on the premise that the city of Nanaimo is going to give you the money. The impression I got at that March meeting was they were willing to shoot you rather than give you any money. They had no inclination whatsoever to support this. What makes you think they changed their mind?
Well, we have a much more positive perspective on that. We've actually been in contact with city staff and a lot of the councillors in dialogue, and there is a lot of support for this project. That definitely there is a few councillors that I think that we really need to let know that this is important for the community. And when you look at the numbers, you look at the benefit for the community, and you look at the fact of how much support this is for a community, this is an ace in the hat. This is a no-brainer that everybody wins for. And so I think communicating, I think having the business plan that really in detail lays out the solid foundation that this is based on, it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to have a good argument of why this is not a good idea and why the city shouldn't support it. And it really is incumbent, I think, on the community to speak up about this. And so if you feel inspired like we do, please write to the city, please get on social media to share this information. And most importantly, it makes a huge difference when the gallery of the council chambers is filled. So if everybody brought four people with them to it, I think that sounds a very loud message. And I do honestly, truly believe that we have an excellent shot at this if we put in the effort. And Jan and I, our board, we've got a great group of volunteers. Many community consultants have been working extremely hard, and a lot of progress has been made. And we feel very hopeful on this, and everybody else should as well.
It is an election year.
Pardon? Yeah. There's a lot of things working for our timing on this one. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, yes, ma'am.
I'm really nervous about depending on the city for funding for you guys. Is there any other way of developing this without city funding?
So this is probably our third go-round of,
Is there any other funding options? Instead of depending on the city to fund something like this, is there any other funding options that are available?
We've tried so many times to come up with a design that we can afford, and the numbers are all high, and they're just too high for a nonprofit to absorb all that debt. Really can't be done. So public funding is needed.
And the city should be paying for this. This is a community service that is dealing with waste. It is moving our ability to manage waste into the future, and it could not be more in line with the official community plan. When you look at other jurisdictions that want to move zero waste and diversion forward, for example, the Cowichan Valley, they invested in 3 fully publicly funded facilities. We're offering an opportunity to not go totally into the fully publicly funded round, but to invest in a nonprofit with partnership that we can really clearly demonstrate that this is going to be a much more effective model than what we currently have. It's going to mobilize public participation. It's going to deal with a wider range of products that currently are going to landfill, and it's going to be able to do it in a much more effective way that ensures that the product gets to recyclers. And so this is something that the public needs to invest in. We have a local government where we all pay taxes towards to have shared resources to move forward a social agenda. This is a very important social agenda. So I don't think that we should be knocking on other doors. We're going to have a membership drive to raise portions. We're taking on the responsibility of the mortgage, but this is a city responsibility, and that's how I think that there is a big possibility for it to work. Yeah.
Along those same lines, the city, the whole facility is dealing with the region more than it is the city, as far as I can say. People coming from all over the place. I think the council mentioned this as well. Is there any chance that this would go to the RDN and they would fund it? Or the council picks it up that way?
So we've been back and forth with the RDN. It's probably been the third round. We actually did a public campaign where we took postcards from people and they put down their address. And so we received over 5,000 postcards, which is an excellent sample size. The majority of users were from the city. And this was a bone of contention with the RDN at that particular moment. Now, there are users from other areas in the RDN that are using the site. Primarily, it is Nanaimo users. And right now, we have the momentum and the highest usage rates that it makes more sense to get this program started here and then work it, and then it'll definitely it'll be seen as an example to grow. The RDN has offered and $300,000 a year for operational costs to support the development of hard to recycle and zero waste recycling and these other programs, which is a large and significant contribution. And so it is now in the city's court, and rightly so, to be able to put the money forward.
Yeah. I think that 300, and then for the RDN, at this stage in time, you look at that 300, you look at the 467 from the city, I think that's realistic and fair, and that gives us a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of the 1,500 people that come. I wrote a letter to the city a year ago when this first came up, and I got a kind of a half-assed answer saying, well, there's lots of other facilities around, don't worry about it. What can we do personally to push this ahead? Talk about writing letters. Who do we write them? Give us an address. We've left our emails.
Yeah. So the email address, you can write to mayor and council. That's online, and you can write to individual councilors.
Well, I did. I got a kind of a.
Yeah.
You know, you're wasting your time, buddy.
Yeah. There are a few councilors that, no matter what, no matter what the community will say, may not support this. However, I believe that there is a majority, and what they look at is volume. So if you open up your email and you've got 60 people that have emailed you that we want this, that really sends a sign. And we know that in our public campaign, it has had a huge impact, the amount of emails that they've had. And so it is an effective tool. Regardless, some councillors may reply back with explanations of why they aren't going to support it, but it really is looking at how many people want this and making the decision based on
I
that.
guess what I'm looking for is actual, we've left your email address here.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get an email of a list of people that we should be sending things to with their email address.
Yeah.
And what we should be telling, and when.
Okay.
Because we don't have a lot of time, but we
Yeah.
want to contribute.
Yeah.
But I've already wasted one
Yeah.
attempt.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, I think that's great feedback, and if people do leave their email there, we can definitely provide something that will make it really simple for people to know when and how.
Meetings that we should attend, you say we should
Yeah.
go to the council meeting on June the.
Yeah.
11.
June 11th, yeah.
But the people that use that facility,
Yeah.
like myself, we need to know that we should be there.
Yeah, 100%. And
How do we find out?
So a lot of what we are using is social media and Facebook. However, not everybody is on that. Yeah, and that's understandable. And I think that, pardon?
It's in the bulletin.
Yeah, if in the paper we put out, there's been articles written that detail, when the public engagement sessions were and when we were going to council. But if you do leave your email, by all means, we can definitely keep you updated, and that's what that's for. So thank you.
And really, to be clear, June 11, that's it. That's our next date. And so to be there in council, June 11, 7 p.m. That's it. So that's the big one coming up.
So with questions, we made it to the back, and I'm going to slowly work my way back forward. So yes.
I'm going to ask some financial questions, actually. So at the end of your last year, I think it was March 2017, you showed long-term investments of $2 million plus dollars, and that apparently is applicable to investments in Windover Enterprises Limited,
Yeah.
or to from a related party.
Yeah.
That's $2 million is a pretty big whack of change. So
Yeah.
can you explain what has happened to that?
So we don't have $2 million that we can invest in anything. That's an accountant's statements, etc. Windover is what is from a wacky property sale in 2006, I think. So Windover is owned by the NRE. And when we bought the property, the people who sold us the property wouldn't sell the property. They would only sell the shares in the in Windover. So we bought Windover to buy the land, and they wouldn't sell it any other way. So Windover does no business. Only the NRE does business, but the NRE owns Windover. And so any investment we make in Windover is for the land that we want to build on, and all of these costs that we've spent already on architects and engineers and getting to the building permit stage. So we don't have money to invest in anything else. It's all gone to this.
So you're saying that the $2 million plus is an accounting for what you spent on it? And
Yes.
in terms of the design? And
Yes.
does it include the current land or the land on where you just moved?
No, the land we want to build on, because the land that we were on is owned by Toyota, and we were leasing and extending leases and paying high rent and et cetera there. So the only land we own is the property we want to build this facility on.
But you did own the land that the MRE was on at one point.
Back in the day. And then, yes, that was originally bought, and Toyota owned the big piece of property, and then it was swapped with money involved, etc. Predates me, but you're right. Originally, the small piece was owned by the NRE, but it's owned by Toyota now.
Can I ask another question? I've worked in not-for-profit area for a number of years, and I've never seen a not-for-profit that hasn't launched. You've known for at least 5 years, if not 10, that this facility was something that you really wanted to build. I mean, it's a wonderful vision, but it is a very opulent vision. And why have you never gone to the public who's so supportive of the NRE and done an actual fundraising program?
I'm an idiot. And I'm not being flip about that, because in 2012 is when I started all this with the city and the RDN and going back and forth and back and forth. Somebody asked, if we thought of going to the RDN. Well, we've gone to the RDN and back to the city and back and forth so many times, it's kind of ridiculous. So I just kept plugging away on it, and it takes a lot of resources in doing to mobilize the public. I always knew you were out there, but it was just me doing it. And so, and now we have a board that knows how to, do that a lot better. And so, it really comes down to just that. I knew the public was there. I didn't have what it took to, to manage that. And so a few years later, some board members and Vote Yes NRE people come along, and they're professionals at it. And it was exactly what we needed. That's the honest answer.
So two things. Are you charitable status?
Yeah, registered charity and a nonprofit.
So why would you not ask for membership? No, money membership. Pay $10 a year or $20 a year.
That's in the plan. It's definitely in the plan. In the past, we've had membership drives and so on, and kind of limited efforts, etc. Because again, just didn't have the resources to do it. But it's a big part of this plan to have a membership drive for individuals and families, and for corporate users, probably with a tiered structure, because there's services that can go along with it: education, waste audits, research. So it's a big part of the future plan.
Because that actually, I think, would speak volumes to the city.
Yes.
You said, well, we have 50,000 people that are members. That's,
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And initially with that campaign, collecting the postcards, I mean, we knew that we were closing and didn't want to ask money from people and then not have it work out. So basically, we definitely have a very strong baseline of how many people are going to use the site, and a membership and membership drive annual is part of the financial plan moving forward, and that's our contribution, paying this $1.1 million left on the mortgage for the property next door. And I think that is quite reasonable in terms of what is being provided to the city, and we have the city organization that definitely is a resource that can help.
thank you.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you need a market to be part of this. I would think that would be an optional thing, that maybe you would ideally like a market, but why does it have to be part of the original plan, like an all or nothing is what you seem to be presenting, instead of something that could be done in stages?
Yeah, so
because stuff could be collected for donations, but you're saying you already distribute a lot of the goods to other secondhand stores.
Well,
so why not
yeah.
just,
Thank you for that question. So part of actually implementing a zero waste vision, higher up on that scale, is reuse. It's a fundamental property. And that reuse market actually provides $200,000 plus a year of revenue back to pay for the program. So it is a fundamental aspect of this overall plan, and without it, we would be selling our operational plan short, and also not actually going for the vision of what we need for the future. And so, yeah, that's
It's also the place where we can expand the reuse into repair programs, and the employment is going to be the focal point of the employment programs, volunteer programs, and building capacity in that area. Employment capacity in the city is going to be the focal point of that, because look at how many kids do you know that don't even know things can be repaired. So if we can use all the resources we have in the community to teach people how to repair stuff and upcycle stuff, then that's going to change everybody's thinking. Don't throw that thing away. Just because you think it's broken, somebody can fix it. It's also a part of education. It's a part of the vision. It's not just stuck there. It really is a big part, and it's higher up in the hierarchy, and it really is of more value than recycling.
because every material
social,
that is
yeah.
reused, that's a piece of material that's not going through resource extraction. It's not going through the manufacturing process, the packaging process, and then also people spending their hard-earned money on something that's more expensive for the same goal. And so when you look at the impact of reuse has, it is probably orders of magnitude more than recycling a consumable.
The question I have is about the actual recycling of goods. Are you just selling stuff to people who recycle it, or can we do recycling right here?
Oh.
Of plastics or
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah. Most stuff goes off the island because the island doesn't have a well established remanufacturing businesses sector going yet, but we need to get that going, and we'll start that in a small way with entrepreneurs. You connect them with some kind of material. Somebody will figure out how to make it into something. It's really easy to recycle glass and make beautiful glass tiles and kitchen countertops and such, but nobody does it. And so definitely that's one thing that China's doing the right thing. They're creating their own circular economy. It seems like they're just not taking back the waste that they send out all over the planet, but it's not really true. They're creating a circular economy, and that's what we need to do locally on Vancouver Island. Right now, most stuff goes to the Lower Mainland, and some stuff goes to foreign markets because we've outsourced manufacturing to countries with cheaper labor. So that wasn't such a great idea as it turns out, but we have to get it back.
Mm-hmm. And the collection facility that can collect the material properly and have it at the right level of purity is an essential step to start to be able to provide a stable and consistent amount of material that is worthwhile to invest in building a remanufacturing facility. And there is that movement. I know that Burnaby there's been investment in building a plastic remanufacturing.
Victoria is supposed to have 2 by next year. And so that's really super good news for this area.
Sorry, I just try to get everybody. I saw a question over. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we were both at the city council meetings there in Wasco, and the thing that it struck me watching all of that as it all went along. I mean, you guys did a great job with presenting. This is what it'll do and why we need it, and the community's really behind it. But most of the city council members seem to be looking for something that on business form where I'd look at as a pro forma. What are your monthly income? What is your labor expenses? What is your utility? What happens? What are your contingency plans when this falls through? Are you guys now able to go to the city with that information, or do you still need help trying to put those?
No.
That's definitely what we've been working very hard on, and we've developed this nice business plan right here. I hope to have music on when I present this. But a lot of this information too was provided to the city and RDN in various forms. We were following a process that was laid out, and it became apparent as we were learning through how to make this happen that something needed to come directly from us. And so we've taken that, and this is here, and this is what we're going to be presenting, and this will eventually be a public document, so everything will be laid out very clearly with all that type of information as you spoke to. So, yep.
You mentioned reserves. What do you have in reserves? Do you have enough to cover the mortgage for the foreseeable future?
So this is that Jan spoke to this question about. Oh, so the question was, do we have operational reserves? And so when we developed the plan to build a new facility and to move, the plan was to have the facility built and simply move right over top. So there's no break in services, and especially there's no break in operational revenue coming in. Because of process delays, we've been put into a situation where we need to close, where we don't have any operational reserve, or where we don't have any revenue. And also, we had to pay over $100,000 in demolition costs, plus all the severance that we didn't have to pay. And that's quickly eaten up our operational reserves. So this is why we're asking for pre-operational funding. That'll pay for the mortgage, and it'll pay for the startup costs, because it takes 3 months before our revenues come back and pay for it. And so this cost is in the realm between $350,000, $400,000 of pre-operational funding, which is really another year of the annual debt servicing that we're asking for. And so it's really important that the numbers that we're talking about, that the individual taxpayer will be paying, are in the general vicinity, whether it comes from property tax or sanitation user rates, of about $10 to $15 a year. And it's really important to keep that in mind, that this is what it's going to cost for a facility that is designed and has services designed to move forward our ability to manage waste towards this 90% diversion and be able to develop programs and ways of dealing with certain products that currently are not being dealt with and going to landfill. And if you looked at the cost of the diversion and the potential for spreading this ability, the cost of a new landfill is about $120 million. That's 20 times the cost of a zero waste recycling facility. The operational cost is much greater. So if that question is invested in something that is a start to figuring out a new and better way of doing it, or not doing anything and going on the way that we've been going and end up paying for a new landfill, I know that no politician, present or future, is going to get into a situation that they want to site a new landfill. It is very difficult to do. And so this is not a lot of money when you put it into the proper context. Yeah.
Oh, my question was, it was mentioned the interim request for demolition costs because that money was taken out of your reserves.
Yes, we had a very healthy
So
reserves.
what reserves does the NRE currently have?
Currently, our reserves have been depleted.
Nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we're going to move backwards now. Yeah.
I'm just curious about putting the emphasis on the right syllable. Instead of talking about $6-point-some billion, it seems to me more convenient to talk about this $10 or $15 a year, which has a further benefit to me anyway. If we get this, we know where this facility is going to be, where these private guys can shut it off tomorrow, taking anything that isn't valuable to them. In fact, when I did take some materials to one of them, they were very unhappy. They had no signs up that they accepted it, but they did, but they were very unhappy with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I can see that shutting down. Now, we've got 37,000 households in town that isn't covered by the general service. I have to take things somewhere, and maybe it's better to be someplace that lasts rather than someplace that's here today and gone tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me a small price to pay for some insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I can't calculate how much it must cost for 37,000 households to run around with this stuff that they don't take, and you have to take care of it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ron, it is the cheaper model. Not only is it the cheaper model that'll last for some time, but if we're going to try and do the same recycling that we do now with the privates, you better take your wallet with you every time you go. So it's not only that it might not be available.
You're going as competition. You can bet that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I make it very clear that the centralized part. The centralized location that we have, Bevin, they did a study of the area that gets crossed the most in traveling through town. It is there. And right now we have a spot secured for the purpose. And if it doesn't get used, I guarantee we're going to see another parking lot for a car sales dealer. And I don't know if that's the highest best use of the land. So keep moving back there, yeah?
In the blue,
Oh,
we've been waiting forever.
sorry. All right, sorry, in the blue, there's Wayne Bain for I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to stand up because I'm short. I have been a recycler since before you were born, and the room.
Him, not me.
I am concerned, very concerned with you going before the council in a couple of weeks with a 6.0 whatever firm price. I would suggest, because I believe in it, I suggest you do a graduated thing. Start small and build on it. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think with the climate in the city hall and in other financial areas, I don't want to see it knocked down, but I'm concerned that it will.
Thank you.
I have a question about your video you showed there. Do you have any arrangements with the RDN landfill for them to divert the things you were seeing going into the bins there?
We don't have a program. There was definitely talk in solid waste management planning discussions of whether we could do that in the future. You know, the landfill has a lot of regulations they have to go by, but there's definitely been talk about whether the NRE could participate with, you know, to divert the stuff that should never be in those bins, because it's absolutely the stuff that we deal with every day.
Yes, because I know in another city that I lived in, I mean, they had different areas and you couldn't throw stuff in the bin.
Yeah.
You were directed, you
Yeah.
know, this goes there, that goes
Yeah.
there. And then
Should be like that.
people came and got it, I don't know on what basis, but.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to take photographs of the landfill.
Yeah, no, we had the video camera and we were like, oh man, look at all this stuff, and we were told pretty quickly to shut it down. It's later on in the video.
You gotta wonder why they don't want people to take
Yeah,
photographs.
no, for sure. Thank you. And so we'll just keep moving our way back. Yeah. Yeah. You should, yeah, you and then the lady behind, yeah.
Okay, I just want to say about our landfill, I moved here in 1972, and at that time they were anticipating having to close it and find a new one in 1972. And because of the efforts in recycling, it is still going,
Yeah.
you know.
It's true.
Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
But my question is, how do you, and how does the city see what you do in relation to partnering with the actual garbage pickup? How do those two dovetail?
So you're asking
Are you
how
talking
the-
about curbside?
Curbside pickup for recycling.
Well, curbside in Nanaimo is managed by Recycle BC. The city has a contract with Recycle BC to do that. We have the complementary contract for the non-curbside materials. You must take them to the depot, the glass and your styrofoam and plastic bags. And we also have everything that you can also recycle curbside at the depot. You can bring it there because we have so many multifamily and apartment dwellers, you know, who don't have that opportunity. It's getting more available now, but it wasn't always there. So that's how we connect. We don't duplicate. We're a complementary service.
Okay, so how much
And
is that?
everything that you cannot recycle curbside or anywhere else is also our zero waste recycling.
So what I'm looking for is a shift in mindset. We're rather coming in and saying, we want 6 million and we're going to do this, saying we are partnering with you in achieving this zero waste goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And take the cost of what you're talking about in relationship to the cost of what the city spends in their fancy new dump trucks or garbage trucks.
Yeah.
That is, it is part of that overall cost of
Yes.
making this a zero waste city.
That's entirely correct. I've never known why organics get treated the way they do and garbage gets treated the way it does. Curbside recycling gets treated the way it does, and the rest is just kicked to the curb and forgotten. I've never known why it has not been publicly funded. It's the same problem.
Yeah.
So that is exactly the case that we make.
And I think that narrative is great to, you know, in conversation and, you know, in writing to really put that out there, and I appreciate that.
And just one quick question, how much did the city want to spend on a hockey rink?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, here and then here.
I have a few questions. Is Recycle BC that does the curbside profit or non-profit?
Oh, okay, so long
That's my
answer.
first question.
Long answer. All of those programs are called Extended Producer Responsibility Program. They are governed by the Ministry of the Environment. They're all managed at arm's length from government through nonprofits. But don't let the word nonprofit, you know, Oncorp, that does all of our bottle returns, is a nonprofit with about $60 million in the bank. So, but that is the structure that they are managed by nonprofit. So Recycle BC is also one of those. They're the arm's length nonprofit entity that manages curbside recycling in the whole province.
Thanks. I have two more questions. One is, do you know what the city pays for that curbside service per year?
I don't think I would be the one to start touting those numbers. I know that they've changed the contract and taken it back in-house now with the new trucks and everything. So I know that's a savings from what they were paying before. Exact numbers, I think you should ask, Charlotte Davis.
But it would be
Who's the
interesting to
manager
compare
of-
the two.
Yeah.
Interesting to compare the two was what I was wondering, this $10 or $15 per household compared to what are we paying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Would be
it's,
an interesting
yeah, all of our services are
comparison.
expensive, for sure, yeah.
The last question has to do more with strategy. I went to the RDN in support of you, or we did, and we went to the city, and I spoke individually to some councillors, and I sent an email to council and, whatever that email was, and got like one auto reply, nothing else. And the councillors I talked to were quite dismissive. So my question is, have you identified on council who supports you and who doesn't?
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you willing to make that public? Because I think it would be very nice to be able to write the people who support and say we strongly, that I really appreciate your support and this is very important to me, and the people who aren't to say, we realize you may not agree with this, but there's, I personally really want it, or, we want it, because I think that the people who are against it, when you said it's a no-brainer, well, maybe, I'm not sure about the brains. But I am also sure that they're not particularly, I thought they were quite rude, to tell you the truth.
We know.
So I think, I would like to know that, and you may feel that's too contentious to reveal, but I think it would be very useful to be able to have council be accountable for, in advance, for making a commitment about this. They might say we can't without seeing your plan.
Yeah, we've had, from the beginning, the mayor has been the #1 supporter since I've been at the depot of recycling in general and a new facility. So he's been there from the beginning. Councillor Brennan's been there from the beginning. Councillor Thorpe's been there. And I can't say how they're going to vote either on this number and this project, but they're definitely supporters, of the NRE. Beyond that, I think you have to ask them, and you have to ask them to tell you whether they support this project or not.
And I think you do too, that's my.
Yeah, no, and I'll think on that for a little second there. Yeah.
Agree with me?
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah, no,
your
thank
goal
you.
as well.
Thank you.
I have a follow on that. Have you gone back and researched the public records for the campaign contributions to this council to see if for-profit recyclers, their lobbying organization, and their senior officers, what contributions they've made to this current council? And maybe summarize that, maybe get a third party to release it so you can keep your hands a little clean from it. But it would be, I think, a very interesting exercise. Follow the money.
Mhm.
See if that is being, used as any kind of leverage to try to, influence any council member.
Mm-hmm.
Something, for an extra $1 or $2 million, you could provide fire and emergency services, and they wouldn't need to build that $17 million Taj Mahal fire hall.
Thank you.
I think Gail's been waiting forever.
Okay.
In the pink sweater.
Although I think my question has been dealt with.
Oh, okay.
right now, because that was what I was going to ask was, do you have particular names of people
Oh,
that
I see.
we should be targeting? I think we've only got 11, 12 days, and I think all this is interesting, and I think we all support the NRE, but I think the whole thing is, if you want
Yeah, I
us to
think
get
it's
on
bad.
board and support by getting in touch with these councillors, they're the people that are going to make the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got.
You have to tell all of them, because even our supporters tell us, because they get emails constantly, they say the biggest thing, don't stop. Don't let those people stop sending emails. You have to tell all of them. It's one click, mayor and council. So
Many of them, so
you can't
staff is
stop.
told all of
You
them
must keep
through-
doing it.
Yeah.
through emails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I-
what they tell us, because
Yeah.
we ask the same question of, yeah.
And I think that the counts that we're doing, we're tracking this quite closely and have a strategy, because at the end of the day, it comes down to a particular set of councillors voting in favor or not for this. What I can say is that there are a couple councillors that would be making their decision that will sway the vote in either direction. And if the numbers of emails show up in their mailbox, it is going to give them an indication of what's important to the public, especially going into a new election cycle, which is going to be important to those councillors. So I think that that's probably the most, what we'll say on that, but I strongly urge to just, there's one email that you can send to mayor and council, or you can send an individual one to each one, would be very helpful. And if you know any councillors personally, and one thing,
Contact them.
use your connections. We're going to move forward now, so I'll take a question here and then.
I just want to echo what you said there, actually. I think we're all in agreement that we need to keep the NRA going. But with all these people in this room, so we need a strategy, and I think that should be it. If everyone here sent an email to mayor and council at nanaimo.ca, just keep them coming.
Yeah.
You have to inundate my emails, it's the only
You
thing
do.
you'll understand.
Put in our.
You do.
The council is fractured right now.
Mm-hmm.
The three councils, the mayor and the two councils we mentioned, yeah, they're on board.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we need to work on the other ones who are carrying a lot of weight.
Mhm.
And this can't really wait until the election.
Mhm. Mhm.
It'd be great if it did.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I
Can I
think
name
Julie,
names? I don't work for
No,
you guys.
no.
there needs to be a good contingent of people in support going to that council meeting.
Mhm.
But I think everyone here tonight should send an email. And if you've got email addresses, add that to it.
Mhm. And
Because I mean, great presentation, and I think everyone's agreed, so we can talk about all we want, let's do it.
And I agree 100%. And the strategy at this point is 1, email the councillors. 2, write letters to the editor. That makes a difference. Be vocal on social media. If you're on social media, express your opinion. That does get seen. And 4, on June 11th, please come out and bring people with you. We've been told by the mayor that makes a large difference if the gallery is filled, and that is a very clear indication that people are willing to make an effort. And the decision may not be made on June 11th. It may go to city staff, but if this is something that we really, really want, that it'll be clear when the actual vote on this will be made, if it's not done on June 11th, and we need to all be there as well. And currently that's what the public at the moment can be doing. So we're going to move forward. Yep.
Yeah, just first of all, I really support what this gentleman had to say, and I would say even better if, rather than asking the NRE to flame the councillors as to who's in favor versus who's not in favor, it's simple enough to put in your email. Could you please give me a response? Are you in favor or not in favor?
Yeah.
Because if you're not
That's
in
a good
favor
idea.
of it, I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I've been saving up, styrofoam and things. Please let me know where you live, and I'll deliver this to your driveway. You can deal with it accordingly.
Mhm.
We live on an island. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what you do with yours.
Yeah.
So that's just a comment, I
Yeah.
support that, but I think we need to take individual personal responsibility to call out to council members and ask them to tell us. And your silence is a no, as far as I'm concerned. My more important question to you, I'm hearing a lot of talk about the lack of funds. And I've worked in many nonprofits, and one thing, it doesn't matter whether you're in profit or not, you never run out of money. And so my concern and question is, if the decision doesn't go the way we want it to, how long before the NRE is insolvent?
I don't have a date for you. We're still lumping along, and paying the mortgage. And we have a very good supporter because we've always had great cash flow. We have a very good supporter with our lender. And so I really think insolvency would be a choice, not a destiny. Hi. Oops, it's not up to me.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I just had a question, more of a clarification. For the 12-year projection that you guys showed, there was some mention about membership. So does the 12-year projection that you have include revenue from membership?
Yes.
Okay, and what numbers did you guys base that on, and what's kind of the range you were thinking for membership?
It's modest at the beginning, but so you know this better.
Yeah.
You have the numbers.
So the membership, we used more of a conservative estimate based on the 5,000 postcards over a 2-month period that were signed on site with people's addresses on, to get a baseline of numbers to extrapolate from. But if for a membership price for an individual, we would charge $15, and for a business, there would be different levels of membership depending on what services they wanted. Be it $50, and that's what the base level is, that when we asked people about a membership drive, and businesses said that it would be no problem, for what they get for $50, it's a thing. $100 and $150. So with those numbers and working at a membership, probably this is a very conservative estimate of about 7,000 individuals and 200 businesses, we would make about $120,000 about $100,000 a year from the membership drive, and that's quite conservative. Now the first year of implementing this, in our projections, we said that it would only be $20,000 that we be taking in, and then it would amp up to the full projection, of which we're estimating at around $100,000. And so that is added into our budget projections into the next 12 years.
So a full year, somewhere between 100 and 125, and then it would grow from there.
And again, I believe that's quite conservative, given the amount of people that do use the site. Right there, and then yourself. Yeah, right. Yeah, you, and then.
So in your projections are you going to be charging? You're going to run things for teaching people how to repair things and reuse it. Is there going to be a cost involved in people learning those things?
So those are going to be linked up with what we already do. We work with about at least a dozen community agencies, John Howard, VIU, Food Share, and so those people are already in employment training programs and employment preparation programs. And so, for example, they would come and work at in one of those programs, and they're funded to do that. So we wouldn't charge them.
If I come and bring my toaster,
right,
and I want to learn how to fix it, and you're running a workshop on fixing toasters, it's a way of revenue stream coming is to charge the people that are taking the class.
Yeah, could do.
Class that VIU.
Right, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. There are, so many things we could never do on the old site that we can now think of doing.
Thank you.
Would you be prepared to ask the city what proportion of the $6 million they could contribute, and then look for leverage or partnering for the remainder?
We've been down that road. So everything everything we've been asked to do, and what you're suggesting, I've spent time and resources looking at partnerships with other recyclers and other developers, and every time the answer is they come back and they want to make a return on investment, and so our lease costs, etc., are unaffordable. So I have really done that, all of that research and all of that work. That's why it's taken, since 2012 to now, I've spent years doing that. Yeah.
Just one other point that I see a benefit, one of the benefits being the jobs that are created, and that's always something that should be emphasized in any venture.
Mm-hmm. It is an asset. Yeah.
Thank you. moving forward here, anybody got a question? Okay, yeah.
Mr. Pickett, you said your reserves were depleted because of the demolition cost. Why, if the land was owned by Toyota, are you required to do demolition if those buildings are theirs?
It's an old lease agreement. It predates me, but that's what it was. And there was no changing it. So that site decommissioning was required as the NRE vacated the land. There was no getting out of it.
Yeah.
Sadly. I tried.
Any other questions?
Let's be done.
Okay. Last question here, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah.
It's all about a philosophy of the future.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the way to go.
Yeah,
There's
it is.
different ways to make it more viable, less expensive, more expensive, but it's the way we have to go. And I really appreciate that you guys have this vision. It's completely in line with everything I'm thinking, but it's pretty close, and I know my kids will like it, and I think it's a good way to go.
So
Can I just
we
add, Ben, that these are people that have been doing this for how long? 25 years?
not myself.
The NRE? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's too young.
So this is trusted, tried and trusted people that,
Yes.
that are going to run this
Yes.
place.
Yes.
So that speaks volumes to me, rather than some conglomeration, some corporation coming in from God knows where,
Yeah.
trying to sell us like the snake oil salesman. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're from here. We live here. We want to stay here. We want to do this for here. Yeah, it's a really important point. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would.
I'd like
yeah.
to say something.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I'd like to say, I'm a volunteer. I'm new to Nanaimo, and I volunteered to help out when I found out that the postcard campaign was starting. And got involved in that, and then when it came time to do a new business plan, I thought I had some expertise and so forth to help out with that. And I've basically been 2.5, 3 months working daily with Jan and Ben, and I can't think of two more passionate and dedicated people about recycling. And I'm willing to continue on this as long as it takes personally. I'm semi-retired. I haven't been working. I've been working for this. And I think it's the best cause I've worked on for a long, long time. So.
Thank you, Gary. So we just really want to extend our thanks for you taking the time to come tonight and listen to this business plan and provide your input. We do, want to extend also our thanks to the volunteers that have been helping out. Gary, that has been putting an incredible amount of time in the business plan and doing the multimedia. Aerosmith Media, that is out here. Jan, who has been working incredibly tirelessly on this process. My partner Larissa, who's part of the RDN Waste Management Advisory Plan, who's put a lot of energy into the zero waste vision that is really taking up momentum. And we really hope that you can bring people out to the June 11th council meeting and do whatever you can, if this is a vision that resonates with you, to spread it. Because I think that this is an investment in a vision of the future that is incredibly timely and is something that this facility, once we can secure it, is going to provide services for generations, and is something that the younger generation really, really needs at this time. And so I really hope that people put the energy into this, and thank you again for coming tonight.
What time and where?
It's at downtown at the Vancouver Island Conference Center. I believe it's a 7 o'clock council meeting. It's a 7 o'clock council meeting, so June 11th. So, yeah, thank you.
Do you know where you are on the agenda?
We are on the agenda, so
We don't know yet, but we are going to try to be at the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. It's great to be in a room full of recyclers again. I miss you all.
Thank you.